go. All right, can you guys see that? Can someone just say yes or no?
Yes.
Yay! Okay. So, in looking at essays and in conferencing with the majority of you, I've noticed some trends, and I thought I would take some time right now to address that before you turn in your final draft or wherever your draft is at. I'd like you to look at it one more time before you pass it in. And so, here's what I'm noticing before I get to. So, I'm noticing that point of view is changing. So, I'm looking for like third person perspective and nothing else. So no I's, no U's. Citations are missing in text, so within the body paragraphs mostly, and noodle tools at the end. Homonym usage. So homonym is like the word sounds the same, but it has two different meanings. So an example of that would be like the two, and two. So TWO, TOO, and like TO. So they all sound the same, but they have different meanings, and we'll get to that in a minute. Abbreviations. So a lot of you are using, references like CDC if you're writing about COVID-19, New York Times, and a bunch of other sources. And sometimes you'll abbreviate CDC as the CDC instead of saying the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And for the New York Times in your essay, you might say NYT as it's known. So we'll talk about the rules for writing abbreviations in your writing. And then writing numbers. Yep, there's another rule here. Numbers under 10, you have to write out in words. Numbers over 10, you can keep as digits or numerals. And then verb tenses. So in your writing, any verb that you use should be present tense. I'm noticing that some of you are oscillating back and forth between past and present verb tenses. Okay, so that was a rundown. During writing conferences, the goal is to really revise. And so that's what we worked on if you had a conference, and thank you for doing that. So that's on the rubric part, and it's also a standard I'll be putting in PowerSchool for this assignment. So conferencing, yes. If you didn't do that, it's not too late. Just reach out to me personally. So the difference between revising and editing is that editing, we're looking at the structure of the sentence. We're looking at capitalization, minor errors. We're not really changing anything big. Now with revising, it's more like working on the sequencing, wording, order, just making sure that ideas are cohesive and that they flow. So there's a huge difference, but for today, we're just going to focus on editing. So let's get to these skills. So this is an example that I took from a student's writing, and this was in her conclusion. And so she said, in conclusion, I think that people should be following these guidelines because the more they go out and protest about it, the more it's going to spread. Now, in this student's argumentative essay, they were talking about how protesting is essentially pointless and that it's not serving any good, the community any good. And so instead of saying in conclusion, I think, because I think you got to take yourself out of the equation. And I'm going to be I am going to be vigilant about this because you as a writer are trying to come across as an expert in your field. And I know you're like, we only, spent like a week or so researching this. I get it. But argumentative writing is a formal style and it's academic in nature. And so we have to adhere to those guidelines as scholars. So here's how I would change that if I were the author. Instead of inserting myself into this, I would take myself out of it and keep it factual and objective. So here's what I wrote. From a global health perspective, it's important for the public to follow safety procedures and protocols published by organizations like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention during this pandemic, so that the population can be protected. This will also help to ensure that the virus doesn't spread faster and cause more people to become ill and potentially die. Protesting only makes this issue worse and unnecessarily puts people at risk. Protesting the virus does more harm than good, so it needs to stop. Notice that, I know that was kind of long, but notice in my version of that student's writing, I never used I never used you. It was just, I stated things like they were facts, even if they were opinion, like this. Protesting only makes this issue worse and unnecessarily puts people at risk. Now, yeah, I'm sure I can ground some of that in science, but some people might not agree with me and say, actually, protesting doesn't make it worse. It makes it better because they're voicing their opinion. So it's kind of a crafty technique in your writing. The other thing I want to point out, citations. That's blurry and I'm disappointed. Sorry about that. So if you can look over to the right here, we're trying to follow the junior style of MLA format. And there are some differences between the middle school junior version and the high school MLA version. And one of those differences you'll notice right here is typically in an MLA paper, you would have your last name and the number of pages in the top right corner of every page. I'm not going to have you do that, but that is something to look forward to in high school. I am going to have you include a works cited page that looks formatted very much like this. So notice that the first line of the citation is all the way to the left side, and then every line after that in the citation is indented or like tabbed once over. If you do this manually, when you copy and paste it, takes forever, and the spacing and the formatting can be a real burden to play with. So here's what I'm suggesting. I'd love for you to make your Noodle tools and to take a screenshot of the works cited, and you can send that works cited page to yourself in an email. It can send it as like a rich text document, or even I think like as a as part of like Google Drive. So just take a picture, upload the picture. It saves yourself the hassle, but it's really important that it looks like this structurally. In-text citations. I need to see tags. If you have a statistic, a percentage, even if you are citing something that's not common knowledge that you got from a source, you absolutely have to say according to the title of the article and the author's name. And so, yeah, that might be a bummer if you have to go back into that, but that's one thing I'll be looking for. Okay, homonyms. Here's the big list. I haven't seen, the one thing that I have seen a lot of is it's and its, then and than, the to, and the your and your. And so I would just encourage you to install Grammarly on your device if you haven't done that already. It's a Chrome extension, and it should be able to catch it for you. If not, just like read it and see if you can catch it on your own. Like, for example, to, like a synonym, an alternative word for to would be also. To is the number form, and then to is like a preposition. So anyways, I can give you, if you would like, little handouts on these, but for now and for the sake of time and the fact that we're distance learning, just install Grammarly and it should catch it for you. Okay, writing abbreviations. How are we doing on time? We're okay. Now, I think I already mentioned this in that first slide, but anytime that you, or I mentioned it in the beginning, anytime you introduce like an acronym, so like a couple of letters that stand for something, for example, Black Lives Matter, a movement that is taking full force right now, it's abbreviated as BLM. If you were to just come out in your essay and say BLM, no, you can't do that. You got to stop. The first time you introduce that acronym or that abbreviation, you have to write it out for the first time. So you would say Black Lives Matter, in parentheses, BLM, or you would say Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, CDC, in parentheses. Anytime you use that acronym abbreviation after, totally fine to use the shortened form. So BLM, CDC. All right, numbers. This one's pretty straightforward. Never, ever, ever start a sentence with a digit. Like 1 in 10 people, you have to write out the 1. So it'd be O-N-E. Anything under 10, write it out, please. Anything above 10, totally fine to keep it as digits and numerals. Is that it? Okay, there's nothing really to have on this. This is something that you're gonna have to like check for in your own essay. Please don't oscillate or fluctuate between, using past tense and present tense for your verbs. Stick to one or the other. For this case, it makes perfect sense to do present tense the entire time. Just be cautious of that. All right, that's it. That was a lot. Those are all 6 of the common issues that I've seen so far in argumentative writing that I'm making comment after comment on. So I thought I would address it kind of holistically right now. I'm going to stop recording. Hopefully that helped, and I will publish this recording tomorrow. And then for the people that are still on the Hangout, thank you. Thanks for being here. And if you have any questions, we can talk about that right now.